It's, of course, a huge honor for me to be on the stage with Minister Klimkin and Minister Bildt, but the real honor and pleasure for me today is sitting next to my friend and colleague, Jan Tombinski. For the United States, the cardinal principle of our policy towards Ukraine has been solidarity and cooperation with our European allies. And certainly over the past 3 years, I could not have asked for a stronger and more supportive partner than Jan Tombinski. Jan was reminding the four of us in the green room just now that literally the first thing that I did after arriving 3 years ago was come to see Jan in his office. One of my very favorite photographs from my 3 years, memorable 3 years, Tatiana, in Ukraine, was when Jan and I went to see Yulia Tymoshenko together for the first time in Kyiv. And for some reason, it was something about the weather that day. We came out, and the photographs the next day in all the newspapers looked like it was a Quentin Tarantino movie. It was the two of us sitting together, and it was a wonderful picture, I thought, of U.S. and European solidarity in supporting democratic forces in Ukraine. The reason for this is simple. The policy of the United States for 25 years, which will not change regardless of what happens in our elections, is to support the vision of a Europe whole, free, and at peace. And that goal cannot be achieved until and unless Ukraine is whole, free, and at peace. Our partnership with our European allies has been critically important. I think at this point today, after what's happened over the past 2.5 years, there can be no question, there is no debate, that Ukraine is Europe, that Ukraine's future is as part of the European family. And that is a vision that brought hundreds of thousands of people together on the Maidan through those bitter, cold evenings and the violence that was inflicted in pursuit of a European vision, in pursuit of structures of governance that meet European standards, free of kleptocracy, corruption, founded in European institutions and European values. I will never forget on those evenings the EU flags flying over the Maidan. But just as important to me, Tatiana, you asked about memories, are the EU flags flying today over Mariupol, a city which was invaded by Russian-supported forces and threw off the Russian invaders, and today is pursuing that same united Ukrainian-European future. It's incredibly important that we're meeting today in the aftermath of Jamala's victory in Eurovision, Yoo-hoo, just fantastic message, symbol of Ukraine's diversity, of Ukraine's creativity, and that wonderful, wonderful ability to capture in an emotional way Ukraine's position as part of Europe. My only regret in this regard, for those of you who did not see Minister Bildt's jacket that he was wearing at Eurovision, I'm sorry he doesn't have that with him today. But I have been inspired in particular to see how Ukrainians across this country, in Donbass, in Zakarpatska, in Odessa, have united behind what Jamala represents and what she accomplished. And I think that's an important message as well in the spirit of Minister Klimkin's remarks to our European partners. It gives the whole world a glimpse into what Ukraine is fighting against, a war of aggression unleashed by Russia, violating the most fundamental principles. And Michael, I know I'm running into trouble here on principles. But I think it is a reminder of what Ukraine is fighting for. It's also a reminder of, again, this extraordinary diversity that characterizes Ukraine today and which is so important. These reforms, which Jan talked about, these are part of building a European standard of governance here in the fullest sense of the word, including protection of human rights and protection of human rights of all citizens. And since Ira is here, I'll make the point. Yuri Lutsenko, for me, the new prosecutor general, has offered the most succinct definition of what means in Ukraine. And I won't go into that, but I'll just say Google it if you don't remember what Yuri had to say. In terms of where we go with our European partners, I think one of the things that inspires the United States are the very sacrifices that Ukraine has made in pursuit of this European future. We cannot forget that. Hundreds of people, the Heavenly 100, 10,000 people killed in the war with Russia. Think about that for a minute. 10,000 human beings who have been killed in a war of aggression inflicted by Russia on this country only because Ukraine and the Ukrainian people want to make their own future. I think going forward, it's going to be, it remains important that the United States, Europe, remain agreed on our fundamental principles, including the important principle of territorial integrity, reinforcing the principle, as President Obama has said, that you cannot change international borders through force of arms. This is not okay. And the invasion and alleged annexation of Crimea cannot be allowed to stand under no circumstances. And certainly for the United States, we are not going to yield on that principle. Again, no matter what happens in our elections. And perhaps most important, and here I will try to wind up, the idea that only the Ukrainian people get to choose their future. It's not to be decided in Moscow, and it certainly is not to be decided in the Kremlin. It's the Ukrainian people, 45 million Ukrainians, who need to chart their own future. I think one of the many strategic errors that Mr. Putin made regarding Ukraine is in terms of his underestimation of solidarity between all of the G7 and all of our European partners. And I will finish where I started in terms of my enormous pride at the partnership that we have here. Jan is gone, but we've got a number of our other key European ambassadors here. I'm glad Ambassador Weil also arrived, and I think especially for Christoph, Jan, Andres, those of us who have been through, and to answer your question, Tatiana, for those of us who've been here over the whole 3 years, it's sort of a life-changing experience because you see this extraordinary example of a people standing up, making enormous sacrifices in pursuit of values that we all hold in common. And for me, that's the essence of the Ukraine story. So again, thank you, and thank you to Alona and to the Institute for letting me spend a couple of minutes on the stage.